And in fact, this is the first story that I got to share in front of you guys just about over a year ago. I stood up here for the first time ever and gave part of a self-disclosure and how I was trying to find my faith at that time. And every time I read these 21 verses, it's just like something new always jumps out at me. Actually, when me and Alyssa were talking about doing this sermon and talking about being restored or having hope that we could be restored, I was originally thinking about Saul to Paul, but I wasn't really familiar with that. And then I was like, I don't want to do the prodigal son again. I've already done a Bible study. I've done step 0 on it. But then God showed me something else. I've read this story as the rebellious son. I've looked at the father's joy. I've sat in the pig pen, and I've even felt the bitter jealousy of the older brother. I really thought that I had exhausted every angle of this story. But this week, God hit me with a, there it is moment. Because this story isn't just a parable, it's a living testimony to step 2. Today, we're going to look at how God can restore us to sanity. And now when I say sanity, I want to make this clear. I'm not talking about your mental health in particularly. I'm not talking about being crazy. I'm not talking about going to the insane asylum. That's not the sanity that we're talking about here. We're talking about the ability to make a choice that doesn't destroy us. And it's that simple. So keep that in mind as we move through step 2 in the prodigal son. We are going to witness how restoration begins the very second we stop trying to fix ourselves and just believe that he can. Our story starts off with a short introduction of our characters. We have 2 brothers and their father. We are told that the younger brother asks for his share of the estates, and shortly after, he leaves his childhood home. In essence, he basically just told his father that he wishes he was dead and he wants his money. It's pretty disrespectful, I would say. So he rebels. He goes to this far country to be free, right? Which, hold on. My keyboard came up. All right. So he goes to this far country to be free, right? We've all felt that before. We think we know best. And that life out there, that was our freedom, right? We were doing the thing out there, So he lets him go. He doesn't follow him. He knows that rebellion isn't conquered by control, that is conquered by the truth. And that usually the truth only comes through suffering. In verse 14, the party ends and the money is gone. And this part of the parable always makes me think of my last week on the streets before I started my 3-year bid. So me and my co-defendant had finally decided that when we got to the point we were paranoid enough that we had to leave the area we were in finally. So we had been driving like all night long, looking for somewhere new to sink our fangs into, I guess. And this is already off to a good parallel with the the prodigal son story, right? Anyways, so we're stopping at a bank because at that point in my life, I was allegedly running an illegal check cashing scheme. So she was stopping at the bank. I was getting out to stretch my legs. We had been in the car all day. I had Captain. He needed to, I don't know, sit in the grass. I don't know what I thought he did. And so let me see. So I'm sitting in the grass, she's in the bank, and the next thing I see coming down the road are some cop cruisers. And naturally, the addict and criminal and me, I'm running. They didn't even have turning signals on yet. But anyways, I pick Captain's cat carrier up, and I just, slyly walk off into the cornfields because we're in the middle of nowhere. I had no idea where we were. This is my first uh-oh moment, in the pig pen, starting to, feel the heat, things are getting a little bit more intense. And so the first thing I do logically is knock on the closest door I can find. Unfortunately, a nice lady opens the door and I ask her if I could sit on her porch and wait for my dad, who I hadn't even called yet, to come get me because my ride had just left me out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know, but she said yes, she did. That kind lady let me sit on her porch. And then I started opening my phone and dialing numbers, trying to find someone to come get me. And apparently I had traveled a good 3 hours away from home. And now that plan starts to crumble. So what's the next best move, guys? Well, I take off running. And it wasn't even minutes later that Captain and I have guns drawn at us, and I'm being told to lower the cat carrier slowly and put down whatever else is in my other hand. You think this is where the insanity would stop, right? Like, come on, Destiny, it's over. They got you and Captain now. But that's not a chance. I do the typical next thing. I don't know my social gig, but unfortunately, I'm not very good with numbers, and my math on my birthday was insanely off. And so at that point, I was just like, okay, you got me, and I gave them my real name. And what had ended up happening, which in my addiction, I thought this was a God moment, but going over the scripture, I realized that this was my human moment, is that they were going to take me for obstruction because my warrants out of the other counties were in-county and adjacent county warrants, which means that if I am not in a county touching my county, it's crazy, right? They're not going to come extradite me or get me. They're just going to let me go, which is ridiculous. But that's what happened. And so they were going to let me go, and I'm fine with that, right? You're going to send me to jail. At that time in my life, that was a vacation. It was the only sleep I got, and it was a break from the chaos in my mind. That wasn't my pig pen. Sending me to jail, fine. But what came next is what shook my reality. They told me they were taking Captain to the pound. So that didn't work for me, God really always knows how to apply just the right amount of pressure to move us out of our own way, right? Because I was fine with going to the pound, but Captain going to the pound wasn't an option in my mind. So in exchange for me telling the truth, with meant telling them all the terrible things that I had done over the last years, stealing, lying, they would let me call my dad and go home. They already had my co-defendant on camera. They knew how she was connected to the crime, but they had been looking for me because they didn't understand how it was happening. I'm not going to go into the whole Captain saving my life story right now, but I just want you to know that that cat changed my life, and he wasn't the one who had gone insane. So for whatever reason, that was what got through my thick skull. It was that I was, hold on. I need a second. We had a really big morning, and I just have anxiety, but okay. I didn't take my, all right. So I did. I told the cops everything I did. I was the only witness in my case, and I was the only witness, and I gave the only testimony in my case. For me, that was what it took to realize what I was lost. And I'm sure that we all can relate to the story, that that moment when we realize that we have gone as far as we can go. For me and the younger brother, that was when our step one happened, which is what happens before step two. We were powerless, and our lives had become unmanageable. The younger brother in the Bible hits that same wall. He decided to go home, but he still wants to negotiate. He rehearses this big, long speech, like, make me one of your servants. But wait, stop there for a second. Why do we do that? Why do we try to suggest our own punishment? It's because we want to control the restoration. We think that if we can just be his servants and earn our way back into this healthy life. It's almost like that we think that's all we deserve is a servant's job. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But this next part is what God highlighted and stood out to me new this week in this passage. The father cuts him off during this apology. He's been rehearsing this whole way home. Can you imagine going and rehearsing this apology, and you're right in front of that person, right? And then they're just like, no, I don't want to hear any of that. And he doesn't even acknowledge the offer of labor. He spent his whole walk home thinking about how he could earn this way back, and his father didn't even care. It's because his way back to the table wasn't based on his performance, it was based on his name. He didn't have to do anything to be restored to his good life, but have the hope that his father would do something about it, even if that meant being a servant and not his son. I called my dad after signing that statement I wrote on myself with no idea if he would even answer. He was always the guy I called. When I ran out of luck.
You got this, baby.
Sorry, my dad passed away while I was in prison. Shit, I practiced this. This didn't happen.
He's right here with you, Dustin.
All right, so I called my dad after signing the statement on myself, and I had no idea if he would even answer. He was always the guy I called when I ran out of luck. But addiction has a funny way of separating us from the people we love the most. And I tell you what, he answered, and he was in the middle of a golf game, right? And he's 70 years old, so that's all he did was golf. It was his livelihood. He wasn't exactly excited about coming to get me, but he did. He stopped his game of golf right there and got in the car and drove hours away to pick up his lost daughter and grandcat. He took me to the store, he bought me clothes, and he gave me his bed. This man was 70 years old. It was as if nothing had ever happened between us. He was just happy that his daughter was home safe. But the best part about this story is that it's your story too. You know, it can be, or it can't, I messed that up, it was supposed to be better. The best part of this story is it can be your story too. It is your story. You know, restoration looks different on everyone in this room. For some of you, sanity looks like being able to look in the mirror without flinching. For others, it looks like your kids finally picking up the phone when you call because they aren't afraid of who's on the other end anymore. For some, it's just the sanity of a quiet mind that isn't constantly calculating the next lie. Restoration is God giving you back to you that you thought you killed off years ago. It's the healthy life that addiction told you was impossible. My dad didn't ask for a play-by-play of the money I wasted, or a list of the laws I had broken, or why I was in trouble. He didn't set a probationary period to see if I'd stay over before he let me in the house. He just moved to the couch and didn't ask any questions. And that is the hardest step too. We spend so much time trying to fix our own problems, rehearsing our apologies, and offering to work off debts to God and people we've hurt. We think that we can just become good enough servants. Maybe we'll be allowed to stay back in the room again. But the father in the parable and the father that I've come to know, he doesn't want a servant. He wants a child. He interrupts our fix-it speeches with a robe and a ring. He doesn't want to hear it. He already knows. He restores us to sanity not because we finally got our act together, but because we finally stopped running and let him be the father. Your place at the table isn't based on your performance. Your restoration isn't based on what you can do for people. It's based on your name. You are a child of the Most High, and he is tired of you trying to fix your problems in the cornfields of your life. So today I want to ask you, what speech are you rehearsing? What are you trying to manage before you feel worthy of step 2 in restoration? What are you trying to fix or you're on your own before you feel worthy enough to come home? Maybe you're waiting until you've had 30 days sober. Maybe you've paid back every cent, or maybe until you feel sane enough